What's up, First Take fam? I'm sure you're all tired today after that incredible Game 7. Coming up today, though, on the First Take podcast, the Cubbies World Series drought is over. So is Game 7 the greatest game in baseball history? And does Cleveland's loss now put more pressure on LeBron James to bring another title to the land? We'll get into it. Plus, what can we expect when Russell Westbrook faces Kevin Durant? It is tonight, people. Let's get it started. What's up, everybody? Welcome into First Take. Is there anything better than a Game 7 down 3-1? The 108-year wait is finally over for those Cubs fans. Congratulations to all of you, your World Series
Only to
champs.
the real Cubs fans. Congratulations to the real Cubs fans.
Welcome into First
Not
Take.
the bandwagon.
With the
Stop
cynic
raining
to my
on
left,
people's
Max
parade,
Kellerman,
man. Stop being
Stephen
a
A.
party. Stop being a party pooper. Major League Baseball did not let us down last night. The Cleveland Indians, the Chicago Cubs did not let us down last night. What a game. It's one of the great games I've ever seen. Let's go, y'all. Let's go.
All right. Coming up also, LeBron tries his hardest to will the Indians to a victory, but does he now have more pressure to win a title after the Indians lost? You don't want to miss that discussion a little later in the show, trust me. But first, I want to dive into this. It's the longest drought ever. It's finally ended with an 8-7 win over the Indians. Clearly a tight game with every twist and turn imaginable. But I want to focus in on this, Max. Who's most responsible, in your opinion, for Chicago's victory?
The winning pitcher of Game 7, of course, Aroldis Chapman, who, by the way, that's right, was brought in to do this. Game 5, he got it done. Game 6, he got it done. And then Game 7, he blows the lead. And he blows the save, and Stephen A. Smith is tweeting at me, see, this is what I mean. This is why you don't bring him in with the 5-run lead in the previous game, even though there were 2 on base, and that could have easily been a 3-run lead in a heartbeat. This is why, because he might give it up. Now, you can't prove the counterfactual, meaning you can't prove what didn't happen. Game 6, if you don't bring Chapman in, can't prove that. Or Game 7, how he would have pitched had he not pitched in Game 6, if there would have even been a Game 7 had he not pitched in Game 6. Can't prove any of that. All we have to go by is what happened. They gave up a lot to get him, to rent him for this, because this 103-win Chicago team was a juggernaut, by far the best team in baseball, one of the all-time great teams, 252-plus point differential, you know, a tremendous, historically great team, but they were soft in the bullpen. So they gave up a lot to bring this guy in to do this. Got it done in Game 5, got it done in Game 6, and this is what he did in Game 7, Stephen A. Was his fastball diminished? Yup. Was his location off? Yup.
Go ahead, dance on both sides. Go ahead, go ahead, take your time.
When you talk for 5 minutes in a row, do I interrupt you?
Take your time. Fair enough.
Now, yes, his fastball was diminished. Yes, his location was off. Yes, he blew the save as a result. But let me tell you the hardest thing to do in baseball. When the baseball gods have made up their mind, which they did, Cleveland was going to win that game. Aroldis Chapman goes into the 9th inning, having blown it in the 8th, with nothing by his standards, starts to go to his off-speed pitch, breaking pitch, and gets through a scoreless 9th when the baseball gods were saying, nope, not your night today, kid. Not your night
after
tonight.
He tied.
Not your.
After he allowed the sky. After he gave up 3 runs.
That's the easiest time to roll over and give up the ghost when you don't have your bad stuff. When you blow the 108-year drought's not going to end. To go back out and gut through a 9th inning in a tied game after he gave up the lead. He's the winning pitcher in Game 7, and he is your postseason hero, Chicago Cubs.
Well, if you're looking at it overall, I can understand your argument. I'm talking about last night's game. There's no way in hell that he deserved the credit for last night's win. When you give up that blast to Davis, allowing the score to be tied, and I don't blame Chapman. I blame Madden for that, which is why I was furious, because Chapman should have never been put into the game in Game 6 that early. It was not necessary. You've got others that you could have leaned on. You've got a Lester, you've got a Lackey, not necessarily Lester because you knew you were going to use him for Game 7, but you could have used anybody but Chapman at that particular point when you had a 5-run lead. I don't want to hear that nonsense. That's just flat-out garbage about Chapman. I'm going to give Schwarber credit for starting the momentum in the 10th. I'm going to give Zobrist Zobrist credit for the double. I'm going to give Montero for adding an additional run. I'm going to give credit to the Bryants of the world and others who showed up and sparked things by generating that level of run production. It's not going to be the pitching. I'd give Lester more credit than Chapman for last night's game, and that's what I'm talking about last night. I'm talking about last night because let me tell you something. I'm not going to give Chapman credit for that. I'm not going to give him the blame because I blame Madden for that. But in the end, it was a collective effort. There's no question about it.
So who's the one?
Who's the one?
Yeah, if you had
the most responsible.
For me, I would say Zobrist.
Pick one.
For me, I would say Zobrist.
Zobrist because he got the hit.
Well, let me tell you why. Because of the momentum shift that was created by Davis, which tied the game. Zobrist coming in and getting that RBI double was a very, very big deal because the Cubs clearly had lost significant momentum because of the lead that was blown and the momentum was flowing in Cleveland's direction. So to me, once Zobrist got that RBI
Not
double,
once Chapman shut them down in the ninth inning of a tied World Series game.
Time out. Here's what I don't like about you. You act as if somebody disagreeing with you means they don't know. They know. We just disagree. Chapman, I am fully aware of the fact that he shut down the Indians in the ninth inning. I'm focusing on what he did in the eighth. My point to you is that I recognize what Chapman did. And the fact that he blew that lead, I don't blame him. I blame Madden for that because of what he did in the previous game. But don't act like I don't recall what I saw or what you said about Chapman.
Did he give up the game winner?
I just disagree. I disagree. I don't care that he shut them down in the ninth as much as I care about him giving up that blast.
How long had it been since Chicago?
In the eighth.
How long had it been since Chicago Cubs won the World Series?
107 years.
108 years. 108 years since they won the World Series. And the winning pitcher.
Plus, but
yeah, right, sure.
Yep.
And the winning pitcher of Game 7 on the road after he'd just given up the lead and was clearly fatigued, clearly didn't have his best stuff. Right. That guy doesn't deserve credit.
Right. I did not say that. I'm sorry. I specifically said I'm not blaming Chapman. What I said is I'm blaming Madden because Chapman, to me, if he was not in Game 6, he would not have given up that homer in Game 7.
He may have to come in Game 6, Stephen A. He may have had to come in. So one base hit, he'd had to have been in Game 6 anyway.
Well, again, Max, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to tell you you're wrong. I disagree. It's not that I don't know what happened. It's that I disagree with it.
Hung up on that. I'm not saying you don't know what happened. I disagree with your analysis.
Chapman should have been in the game in Game 6 that early. I believe that had a lot to do with what he surrendered in Game 7. I'm rolling with Zobrist because after Cleveland had reclaimed the momentum by tying the game, he sat up there and got that RBI double.
Let's go back to why you believe he was fatigued and gave up the game winner in Game 7. Sure. Because Madden brought him in Game 6. So it wasn't up to Chapman, right? He had to go in. Even I'll concede, which I don't agree, but for the purposes of this argument, let's say it was the wrong thing by Madden to bring him in. And 5-run lead, even with 2 on, don't use your best guy. He might be fatigued for Game 7. That's not on Chapman. He thrown 42 pitches in Game 5, got it done. 20 pitches in Game 6.
Hold on. I got Q-tips. I have Q-tips because clearly your ears are waxed.
I'm not there yet.
I said 5 times. I'm not blaming Chapman. I blame Madden because Chapman should not have been brought into the game.
That is my point.
I said that 5 times.
Therefore, since you don't blame Chapman for being used, he's just doing his job and getting it done, and the fatigue you blame for him giving up the home runs, that's not his fault. But the following inning, in spite of the fact that he did that, in spite of the fact that the Cubs had that the Cleveland had the momentum, in spite of the fact he didn't have his best stuff, he figured out a way to get it done in a tie game in the ninth inning.
The 3-run blast,
which you just said wasn't his fault.
Which
you just said wasn't his fault.
But what I'm saying to you is we're not talking about who's to blame. We're asking who you're giving more credit to. I'm not going to give the most credit to the dude that allowed the score to get tied from 6-3 to 6-6. I'm going to go with Zobrist because to me, he quelled the momentum of the Cleveland Cavaliers. A man of your intelligence, I don't understand how it's difficult for you to understand
I'll tell you how.
and comprehend that point.
I will tell you how, because that doesn't quell momentum to drive in the run. That gives you momentum. Actually, the guy who quelled momentum, the guy who quelled the momentum on the other side was Chapman in the ninth inning of a tie game.
Educate me, Max. Is this something that's quantitatively being analyzed by you, or is it something that you peeled from somewhere else? So, in other words, the fact that he helped give the Cubs momentum. Oh, that's different than taking momentum from the Cleveland Indians. Really?
Actually, yes, you're defining. Let's just define terms.
Nitpicking. I mean, how much? I mean, do you needle and thread when you get home too? Is that what the kind of stuff that you do? I mean, talk about nitpicking.
Stephen A. Are you kidding me? It ain't football where the defense can put runs on the board. All the defense can do is stop the momentum of the other offense. That's what Chapman did in the ninth, by your own admission, without his best stuff because his managers overused him.
Well, in my experience covering sports, when you sit up there and you gain the offensive over somebody, it kind of quells their momentum. It's like simultaneous.
Doesn't really carry over that way, though.
Know.
If the other pitcher doesn't make his pitches, then they get the momentum right back.
I have to believe that you understand that.
Right, but
I have to believe that you understand.
It doesn't work that way because you can score all you want. If the other pitcher doesn't stop the other offense, they take the momentum back. Chapman stopped the offense.
So Zobrist scoring a run and having the RBI double, it took nothing away from Cleveland, knowing they had to go up in the bottom of the 10th and had to score or else they lose.
Actually, no. They did score. They scored one run. They just didn't score two.
They didn't score two.
Right.
They didn't score two because Montero followed up Zobrist.
Right.
We understand that.
So actually, Zobrist didn't have the winning run.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
but Zobrist gave them the lead, and then Montero knocked in the winning run.
Here's my point. They give up a lot to rent a player because they believe he addresses the issue they have to win the World Series. He then gets it done in Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7 he gives up the lead, but with the money on the line,
I'm talking about last night's game.
Okay, ninth inning, scoreless. And they won the World Series. So they brought him in to do what he did. He did it. They won the World Series. That's my guy.
Okay, that's your guy. Live with them. I have a problem with the fact that he gave up a 6-3 lead. I'm rolling with Zobrist.
Feisty out of the gate. I like it. You two on little sleep. This game took 10 innings, 4 hours, and 45 minutes, but it had all the passion, drama, and history you could ask for, plus the fairy tale ending for many. And for Max, that's the true Cubs fans. Stephen A., was this the greatest game you have ever seen?
I don't know if I could go that far. I mean, I've got to think long and hard about that one because I've seen a lot of great games in my career in various sports, whether it be the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the national championship game that I was at when Villanova hit the winning shot against North Carolina. There's a lot of things. I remember years ago, Max, I was watching college basketball, and I saw a game in the Final 8 between Syracuse with Derek Coleman and Sherman Douglas against Illinois with Kendall Gill and those boys, and what a phenomenal basketball game that was. And that's not the only one, of course. Again, this is just off the top of my head. I've got to think long and hard about it.
Cavs and Warriors a couple months ago, Stephen A.
That's right. Well, I was getting ready to go there. I was getting ready to go there too. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of games in my career. This is definitely up there. It's one of the great games that I have seen. Back and forth, nip and tuck throughout the game. You were on your feet. I mean, and not only that, it was the suspense of what Lester was going to do, how his throwing error ultimately brought in a run or two. Chapman giving up the home run. Zobrist and Montero responding. Cubs generating runs off of Gluber before that when Gluber was supposed to shut them down. Madden and his decision-making, which was a bit quirky to be kind, but ultimately proved, to ultimately work out in the end. Terry Francona using his staff the way he was utilized. Andrew Miller coming up in there and not being able to save the deal, giving up the blast that he gave up to the Ross, oldest player to hit a home run in the World Series history. I'm watching all of these things unfold. There were so many storylines that entered the equation. It was nip and tuck. At no time could you count one team or the other out. It was a scintillating. It was a sensational game, no doubt about it. And I'm sure that when I go back and really think long and hard about it, I would sit there and put this up there as one of the greatest games that I've ever seen. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of great games and a lot of in different sports throughout the year. It's very difficult for me to definitively say this is the greatest, but this is definitely up there, no doubt about it.
Well, I can definitively say it was not the greatest World Series game ever, let alone, greatest Game 7 or in any sport. It wasn't even the greatest World Series game ever. It was a great game. Don't get me wrong.
Well, which World Series game was better?
Well, I can go through a whole bunch of them. First of all,
no, I'm just you got a whole bunch.
I got a whole bunch of them.
I'm seriously asking. I'm not debating.
No, I get it. The last time Cleveland was in the World Series, they lost in extra innings in '97. Did a bigger rating, by the way.
St. Louis a couple of years ago.
St. Louis
a couple of years ago.
In Game 6, it wasn't in Game 7, but in Game 6 they had to erase two different two-run deficits to stave off elimination. Yankees, Diamondbacks, because this was also a sloppy game. The story
that hurt my feelings.
What?
That hurt my feelings right there. You're talking about when Gonzalez broken bat, bloop single.
Three different games in the shadow of 9/11, right after 9/11, where everything got pushed back. First, the Yankees up against it, bottom of the ninth. Tino Martinez hits the home run to tie it in the bottom of the ninth, and then Derek Jeter with the Mr. November home run to win it the very next night. Scott Brosius with a two-run shot to tie it. The Yankees go on to win it. Then finally, it looks like they're destined to win. Game 7, bottom of the ninth. Mariano Rivera on the hill, and they lose by. I mean, by the way, the game that I just mentioned, Arizona and New York. Game 7 did a bigger number than the game did last night. How about John Smoltz?
Whoa. It's the Yankees. It's the greatest sports franchise in history. I mean, why are we acting surprised?
Okay, how about John Smoltz? How about John Smoltz and Jack Morris, Atlanta and Minnesota, 91, Game 7, 1-0
I like
game.
That was great, but that wasn't last night to
Extra
me.
innings.
Not to me.
Listen, this is my point, Stephen A. In terms of storyline, you're right. In terms of storyline, this is one of the 10 or maybe even 5 greatest World Series
coming
games
together,
you'll find.
Max.
Yep. But it was a sloppy game.
Everything coming together.
There were errors, there were blown chances, there were missed opportunities. It wasn't a crisply played game. And so then if you want to go to how much fan interest was there, the game I just mentioned, Morris versus Smoltz, Minnesota, Atlanta, Game 7, when Morris outdueled Smoltz 1-0 in extra innings, did 50 million viewers. This one is doing a monster number, might do 35. So this narrative out there that this had the most interest, it's not true by a long shot. The idea that it's the greatest played game, also not true, but it is a tremendous story and a great game. It is somewhere in the top 10 of all-time great World Series games played.
It's a tremendous story where the storylines and the game collided with one another and meshed. It meshed quite well. You got to give credit where credit is due to that. I'm not going to hold the actual numbers against them because we've discussed and lamented to some degree the popularity of the sport then compared to what it is now. So the fact that the previous World Series in the 90s did about 50 million, but this did plus 30, I'm not going to hold that against them. The sport of the National Football League wasn't king then the way that it is now. Even though the NBA was very popular, it wasn't the global iconic brand it is now.
You got to kind of adjust for errors. You have to kind of adjust the number for errors.
Right.
I agree with that. It did in its time. This number is as impressive, but not necessarily more than some other games that have been played. But you know what else? There's no natural rivalry, Cubs versus Chicago, Cleveland in this respect in baseball. The way there was in 2003 when Aaron Boone hits the 13th inning home run in Game 7 at Yankee Stadium against the Red Sox.
That's a great moment as opposed to the game.
Well, it was a great game, too.
It was a great game, but that was a great moment.
And that's a built-in rivalry. If you're not going to have a built-in rivalry, at least have the Cubs play the juggernaut, or the Cleveland team play the team that always wins. These were two teams that both hadn't won in forever. Neither one considered the team that always gets to win. So that storyline is what it is, but it's not kind of the classic underdog storyline. It didn't do the biggest number. It wasn't the greatest played game, but it had incredible drama. There's no doubt about it.
And
we'll always remember it.
Game played. Really did. I don't view it that way. I really don't. But I hear you.
All right. One more time, congrats to all the Cubs fans. Enjoy it all, soak it in, enjoy the parade.
By the way, Molly.
Yes.
Special thanks to my man. I mentioned him a week or so ago. His name is Dan Filato, my former radio producer, good friend of mine, diehard Chicago Cubs fan, one of Bill Murray's best friends in the world. Congratulations to him. He cried for decades. He's crying with joy today. I got to give him
By
the way,
those are the stories we love.
All the fans, the Cubs fans that put in the work all these years, congratulations from the bottom of my heart. And everybody else who jumped on the bandwagon.
You're such a New Yorker. Oh, we've all had tonight's game circled on our calendar since the 4th of July, the day our country changed forever, when Kevin Durant announced he was joining Golden State. This much-anticipated matchup all goes down tonight. Kevin Durant and the Warriors will host Russell Westbrook in the Thunder at Oracle. Stephen A., is tonight's game bigger for KD or Russ?
I think it's bigger for Kevin Durant. Russell Westbrook is balling. He's averaging 38, 10, and 10. He was my choice to be league MVP before the season even began because I consider him the ultimate assassin existing in the game today. He's the most ruthless competitor, Max, that I've seen in the NBA in quite some time. Every time I talk to Allen Iverson, he reminds me that Russell Westbrook is his favorite player in the world. That's his favorite guy. And we know how Michael Jordan feels about him as well, with him endorsing Michael Jordan's product, obviously. But let's point something out about why it's so important for Kevin Durant as opposed to Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook did nothing wrong here. He's with the same team he was with last year. He's balling out. He didn't want to leave. He galvanized the folks there in Oklahoma City in the immediate aftermath of Kevin Durant's departure, which helped stave off some of the negativity sifting through that city and that franchise like a virus because of Kevin Durant's departure. And more importantly, Russell Westbrook hasn't had much to say since Kevin Durant moved on. It's Kevin Durant that has had things to say. No doubt, not entirely to his fault, because if you're being asked questions, it's very respectful for him to answer, and he shouldn't be vilified for that. But there is a heightened level of sensitivity that he should have had towards Russell Westbrook that he didn't. And I read the quote yesterday that he gave, which I had profound respect for, because I think that Kevin Durant let you inside his heart and let you understand where he was coming from. So he shouldn't be vilified in that regard. But having made the move that you made and going through all that you go through with people questioning your inner toughness, Max, as you, myself, and others have been prone to do. We know that Kevin Durant, talent-wise, is one of the best 3 players in the world. We know that he could average 30 in his sleep. We know how elite he is. But there have been times in terms of adversity and tough moments where we found ourselves questioning what is it inside of you that can respond to that level of adverse circumstances and come out on top anyway, not just in terms of victories or defeats from a collective perspective with you and your team, but you as an individual. What kind of heart do you have inside of your chest that's going to respond to the challenge, put on that black hat, and say, I don't give a damn what anybody thinks or anything of that nature? This is going to go away towards alleviating those concerns about him. But if he comes out there tonight and appears timid, and Russell Westbrook is in assassin mode, and this dude is in attack mode, going at it, and Kevin Durant is just flowing along, that is something that's going to lend itself towards those questioning the psyche of him, and does he have what it takes to truly be a champion, or is he one who's destined to ride the coattails of champions? Tonight, in a matchup of this magnitude, because of the storyline involved, the personalities that are colliding together, these are the kind of things that you have to think about if you're Kevin Durant, and that's why I think it's more important for him than Russell Westbrook. We know Russell Westbrook, win, lose, or draw, we know he's going to do what he always does. He's going to attack. We don't know that about Durant, and that's part of the problem.
I agree with all of your facts, and I agree with your analysis, but I disagree with your conclusion. I think there's more pressure on Westbrook tonight, primarily because they broke up. Westbrook was the one who got broken up with. Durant went on to greener pastures. And because Durant left Westbrook in the lurch, it's amazing that they still haven't lost, because that's what a beast Russell Westbrook is. But because he left him in the lurch, no one's expecting OKC to win a championship this year. When they link up with Golden State, that is their championship. That's Westbrook's championship. And if Durant underperforms against Westbrook, big deal. It's a headline for a day or two. But in the long run, Durant's not going to be judged for how he plays Oklahoma City. He's going to be judged by whether or not they win an actual championship this year. Then the pressure will be on him, not when he plays Westbrook. Now, you mentioned Westbrook's the ultimate assassin in the game. I always say, Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson had a baby, and it's Russell Westbrook, which is why he is my favorite player in the NBA. He's my favorite. He's imperfect, and that's part of the reason he's my favorite. He plays with this kind of unbridled aggression, and usually if a player plays that way, they can't win in the context of a team. Westbrook, and we see it now, is able to somehow win in a team game playing like the Incredible Hulk. So he's amazing. I'm Team Westbrook. Also, he hasn't done anything wrong. The way KD handled this situation, KD's in the wrong. So all those things point to maybe there's not so much pressure on Westbrook. He's a beast. They haven't lost. KD did him wrong. But the bottom line is this is Westbrook's championship. Every time he plays KD, the focus will be there. If the Golden State Warriors lose, big deal. They're actually going to play for something meaningful later.
Well, here's where I think you're wrong. You're bringing up the outcome in terms of victory or defeat. I'm bringing up Durant and Westbrook. It does not matter. We don't have any expectations for Oklahoma City other than for them to make the playoffs, and we hope that they'll go deep and they'll collide in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors, we know how elite they are. Anything less than a championship is going to be a bust where they're concerned. This game itself, in terms of the outcome, means nothing to anybody. It's the 5th game of the season. And by the way, Oklahoma City, let's not get too carried away at the fact that they're 4-0. Yes, they beat the Clippers last night, and that was true. Their first 3 games of this season, their victories were against Philadelphia, Phoenix, and the Lakers. I'm sorry, what do you want, a cookie? Let's not get too carried away.
Lakers ain't that
because
bad.
Those 3, please. The point is that it's not really about that. What I'm saying is that Russell Westbrook is constantly in attack mode. Sometimes he's successful. Sometimes he's not. But he cowers to no one. In the case of Kevin Durant, he is universally recognized as one of the top 3 players on the planet. What you're looking for from him is a question about his heart. Keep in mind, Max, this is the same guy that some people question that he didn't go to the Eastern Conference because he didn't want to have to deal with LeBron until he absolutely had to. This is the same individual that some people question how badly did he really, really want it against Golden State when you ultimately ended up going there a month later when you were playing for Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. This is the same individual that when he averaged plus 30 on better than 50% shooting in the NBA Finals, there were key pivotal moments where he couldn't be found, and they called LeBron James his Achilles heel. So when you're talking about those adverse circumstances that he has to deal with as a player, there's nothing that he's had to deal with from an adversarial perspective than what he's got to deal with tonight.
Well, and from Westbrook's point of view,
or standing across from a guy that he called his brother that he's going to text,
like Cain and
instead
Abel
of
brothers.
looking at him and talking to him and all of that other stuff. That stuff is going to linger with him. He's got to respond to it by saying, I don't give a damn. I'm going to bust your butt anyway because I'm still KD,
from Westbrook's
one of the
point
top
of view,
3 players on the planet.
You say he's still one of the top 3 players on the planet. From Westbrook's point of view, maybe he wants to prove, in fact, he and not KD is one of the top 3 players on the planet. Maybe he wants to show that the Thunder are even better when it's clearly Westbrook's team. Because Russell Westbrook said something interesting. He said, he was asked, what does this game mean to me? He goes, my approach is the same every game. And he's my favorite player, I just told you. But I don't think that's true. Because we've seen down the stretch of important games, Russell Westbrook's effectiveness decrease. Partly, it seems to me, because he's wound so tight. He's so aggressive. He wants it so bad. So he has to overcome that perception that under pressure, he's not quite what he is in other instances. He also wants to prove that maybe he and KD is the better player. There's a lot of pressure there for him.
There's no pressure there for him. You have to remember that even though he wants to go out there and show that he's the man, again, that's going to show itself throughout the season and in the postseason. We're talking about the moment tonight where you're standing across from a guy who you might, I don't know this to be true, but you might feel betrayed you. That kind of emotion, when you have that kind of encounter, when half the basketball world would look at Russell Westbrook and say, I kind of agree with that. If you're Kevin Durant, you've never had your character in that regard questioned and then having to be confronted by those storylines all rolled up into one night. That's what's happening to Durant tonight. And to go out there and to be passive with Russell Westbrook coming at you, whether he's effective or not, he's always in attack mode. If he's coming at you, but you're not going back at him, watch how the storylines are going to be thereafter. Kevin Durant, I just don't know about him. That's exactly how people are going to look at him.
No one is safe in Foxborough. Just ask Jamie Collins, whose name blew up on Twitter on Monday. All of us were shocked when the Pro Bowl linebacker, who had 10 forced fumbles since 2013, he got dealt in the middle of the season, mind you, to the Browns. In the wake of this, the question is, Brady, could this happen to you?
You can't be around this long and not realize that, the world will keep spinning and the sun will come up tomorrow without you. That's just the way it goes. And I think you enjoy just the experiences that you have, and then also understand like it just keeps going on. So it could happen to anybody. You just have to just show up to work, do the best you can do every day, and let your performance try to just speak for itself.
Antonio Pierce is here with us in the world spinning, my friend.
Yes, it is. It is spinning. It's another day. It's Thursday, right? So it's still spinning.
Yes,
what's going on?
It is.
What's going on, baby? How
what's
we doing?
Going on, AP?
Good.
What's up, baby?
Good to see you. Let's get
Giant
into
Super
it.
Bowl champion. Sorry.
Let's talk about some championship World Series, right?
How will the Brady era end in New England?
I think it's different than what we've seen with other star players out of New England. This is a different guy. This is a guy who now for a decade plus has owned the division, has won multiple Super Bowls, who I think will go down as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And to me, I don't think that you make that move. And I know they had this issue, not them, but the San Francisco 49ers when they had Joe Montana and Steve Young, you had to make a decision. Well, there's not another guy on that roster that's going to make you even think about trading or getting rid of a Tom Brady before he decides to retire on his own. And I think a guy who's come in the way he's come through the league, that chip, that fire, that's burning the wood and the emotion of him, that's never going to die out. And I don't think you're going to see a downward year for Tom Brady, for the Patriots to make that move. And I think when Belichick leaves is when Tom Brady leaves. I think that's when the era ends, not through trade or through a release.
I used to argue with this about this with Marcellus Wiley on Sports Nation when Peyton Manning was in the middle of his 55 touchdown, incredible. The last time a guy looked as good as Brady looks right now was Peyton. And I know he had an injury but before that he was very healthy and he looked great. And Marcellus thought he could go on and on and on. I'm like, look, I looked it up. No quarterback has ever, you could argue maybe Warren Moon, but even then, been elite at the age of 41. None of them. And they all fall off a cliff, meaning, I'm very specific when I use the metaphor of a cliff. There's not like gradual decline and eventually, it's like they're at such high altitude because they know so much about the game at that point. They're still playing. They're probably with a coach who knows what he's doing. They got a system. And there's no warning signs except for the age, that number, and then right off the cliff. So I have to assume, like every other person who ever lived in the history of the known universe, that will be the same for Tom Brady. The question is, what happens then? Does he wind up in another uniform as Peyton did, even before he fell off the cliff, as Favre did, as Joe Montana did, you mentioned, Joe Namath did, like all these guys wound up in other uniforms? Or does he feel at a certain point, look, if I'm just another guy, I don't want to keep playing. Because if he feels that way, eventually he will retire a Patriot. And if he says, you know what, I want to keep going, he won't. This is the history of this league.
Stephen A.?
Well, the thing that amazes me about Max is that I happen to know that this man watches games. But he just, and with those eyes, that's why I tease him and call him Beetlejuice.
The baby
with
blues.
those eyes, okay, with those eyes, and knowing he watches the games, he said, don't worry, you look good, brother. You certainly look better than me. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. With those eyes, those beady eyes of yours, knowing you watch the games, it's amazing how much you just lean on numbers. I mean, I don't even understand why you aren't a mathematician as a profession. It's like you don't even care. You're going to come to us. And Antonio Pierce is a Super Bowl champion. He is sitting right in front of you. This man just said to you that Tom Brady is going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in history, okay?
I think he's the greatest. I think Brady's the greatest.
Hold on. Max, I'm getting to the point. Zip it. The point that I'm trying to make to you. The man has completed at least 63% of his passes every year since 2007. And according to Max Kellerman, AP, because Tom Brady is going to turn 40 in August, what we're going to see, we're not going to see something gradual. He's just going to show up one day, bam, it's over.
That's precisely what I'm saying.
Now, Antonio, let me be clear. Let me be clear. Max isn't talking about injury. He isn't talking about any of that stuff.
It might be an injury.
To me, that's the only way.
No. We debated that, Max. We ain't got time for that right now. Max is saying because the man's birth certificate hits 40, it doesn't matter what you're seeing, Antonio. It does not matter what I'm seeing.
Sometime before he's 41, here comes the cliff.
Hold on. We're just going to wake up one day, AP, and Tom Brady's going to go from passing for 4,000 yards to suddenly looking like, like just some average quarterback.
Just as like Peyton Manning and Brett Favre did. And I had these same arguments with people
all the time.
What about your eyes? Can keep going
Don't
forever.
give me numbers.
Peyton
what
can
about
keep
your eyes?
My eyes told me Favre was still throwing the ball down the field when he was 40.
What about your eyes, Max?
I think the difference.
What about your eyes?
Brady
what about
looks,
your eyes?
I will tell you. Brady,
don't give me numbers. What about you?
Can I tell you? Brady looks now like Peyton did early in the season when he threw the 39 touchdowns before he got hurt late in the season, or that 55 touchdown season.
He
looked like he could do it forever.
Surgeries.
Yeah, I'll say the biggest difference. I'll say the biggest difference between those quarterbacks that you mentioned, Favre and Joe Montana and Peyton Manning, they had significant injuries throughout their career. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, for the most part, has been a healthy quarterback other than
Favre?
Thank you.
Favre was the Iron Man.
He was Iron Man for a lot of different reasons, but he got beat up. He got beat up a lot. Tom Brady does not take the hits. He doesn't take the wear and tear throughout his thing. And I think when you look at the personnel and the coaching staff and the environment and the type of guys that he has around him in New England, he's going to play at a high level for as long as he wants to, as long as Belichick is there. I don't see, to me, this guy is one or two more Super Bowls away from being by far, no questions asked, the best quarterback ever.
I think he's already there. See, people get it twisted. They think you're saying something that I think is negative about Brady, you're anti-Brady. Or you're saying something I think is positive about Brady, you're pro-Brady. I'm saying both. He is already, clearly to me, the greatest quarterback who ever lived. And, like everyone else who ever lived, he will fall off the cliff before he's 41 years old. I don't think those two ideas are mutually exclusive.
Let me say one thing, though. I don't think that
You're always, hold on, Molly. That's the problem. You're always saying both. Here's what I'm focused on. Since you won't get focused, I'm going to make you focus. You're saying Tom Brady's going to fall off a cliff. That all because he's turning 40 next August, that everything that we're seeing Tom Brady is going to disappear like that.
The eye test is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, by the way, Molly, AP, this is what Max left out telling you. Not only did he say Brady's going to fall off a cliff, he said it's going to happen within the next 14 months.
Well, it was 18 months when I said it, and it likely.
Yeah, 18 months
sometime before he's 41. Probably got 40 years.
That's what he's saying.
August 2017, the world's going to end for Tom Brady.
By the way, this is another thing. This is another thing I've heard. This is another thing I've heard. First of all,
Max, can you tell him that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Could you admit to him that's what you're saying?
I don't know how else I could say yes. How many languages do you want me to say it in?
See.
14 months. Okay. He's just going to fall off a cliff.
That's correct. That's what's going to happen, just like it happened to everyone else. And yes, he's playing great, just as Peyton was. Exactly, Stephen A.
You know what, Max? I got AP. You and Molly are my witness. Max, here's what I'm going to do for you, man.
Let's get a calendar.
Yeah, we got to put the calendar.
If Tom Brady falls off a cliff,
yeah.
If Tom Brady falls off a cliff, Max Kellerman, I will read Socrates or Shakespeare. I will go to an analytics class with you. Max,
this is what I want to say to you, Stephen A. This is what I'm hearing.
Your bag.
This is what I'm hearing out of New England. I get the following. I get, how dare you say he's going to fall off a cliff? You're crazy. He can do this forever. And simultaneously, I get, oh, duh, you're just saying he's going to get old one day. Everyone does. I think the point I'm making is very straight. No, I'm not saying you. The point I'm making is very straightforward. Everyone gets old eventually, including Tom Brady. I'm just putting a date to it based on the history of humankind. That's going to happen if you play the quarterback position before 41 years old. So I'm giving you a date. That's all. That's the only difference.
August 2017. You need to have that party.
We'll
Molly, Antonio, if Max Kellerman, if Tom Brady shows up after he turns 40 next August, I'm talking about 14 months from now, because he said it when it was 18 months. 14 months from now, if Tom Brady falls off a cliff, Max Kellerman, when you travel, I will carry your bags in one hand and have a book on Socrates or Shakespeare in another, traveling with it. I'm telling you right now, I'm willing to do it, Max.
Because 14 months, 14 months. What are we in? We're in November.
Oh my goodness!
So that's by the end of the following season, which is what I meant by the end of next season. Before that's going to be his age 40 season, going into 41 season. That's it for the. And what I said is the same thing I said about Peyton Manning and Brett Favre, and Kobe Bryant and Derek Jeter. The guy you think you know now, take a good long look, because even if he's still playing, he ain't going to be the same. That's going to be it for this guy.
Stay on your toes, because you never know when this could happen. It could come at any time. We won't see signs prior.
That's right.
It's just
what's
when the date
Max's
hits.
definition of what's Max? By the way, for clarification purposes, while we're on this subject, for clarification purposes, Max, what's your definition? Like he goes from passing for 4,700 yards to passing for 4,500?
No.
What's the fall off?
Let's put it this way.
What's exactly the fall off?
We'll determine that another time, but we will do that. Let's put it this way.
Well, we need to, because if I'm willing to carry the bags and read Shakespeare, we need to.
No doubt. Peyton Manning just won a Super Bowl, right? And he won. He was the quarterback left field. Was he an elite quarterback? Was that Peyton Manning? No and no. So it wasn't. I mean, so you can win a World Series.
55 touchdowns?
Sorry?
You talking about 55 touchdowns?
Talking about Super Bowl year.
No. Super Bowl year. Peyton Manning last year.
No.
Peyton Manning, but he won a Super Bowl because he's on a team with a great defense and all that. Right. But none of us would say he's elite. Tom Brady will be where Peyton Manning was, lucky to win a Super Bowl, lucky to be playing the way the Patriots operate, but he'll be where Peyton Manning was last year by the end of next year.
That'll do it. We good? Okay.
So Max has this season, the rest of this season, and next season as a safety zone. So after next season,
I said 14 months.
Okay. We'll get the calendar.
Who else in sports punditry gives you the date?
We move on to someone who certainly knows how to bring it. T.O. knows all about the Cowboys, and Dak is his quarterback.
Inside, I'm crying tears. That is my quarterback. But again, that's definitely some dialogue that Tony has to have with management. He and Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, I think, who's the general manager. So I don't really know who's calling the shots over there.
Right.
But I think it's a no-brainer to leave Dak Prescott where he is. I mean, you have momentum going.
Right.
I think that would be probably like the biggest mistake to make, obviously to insert Tony, although he's done a lot of great things. Tony's my guy. But again, I think he realizes too, I think he's a smart guy. He understands what's going on.
T.O. from Muscle Beach, now is Venice. But of course, he's a former Cowboy, telling TMZ he's on Team Dak over Team Robo. Stephen A., should we care what Terrell says?
Yes, you should. You should care for a bevy of reasons. Number one, he's one of the elite wide receivers in the history of the NFL who should be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about that. When you look at it, 153 touchdowns in his career, 15,934 yards. Come on now, there's nothing to talk about here. The only reason I can understand him missing out on the Hall of Fame in his first go-round because they had to put Marvin Harrison in there, who did deserve it. But make no mistake about it, T.O. should be in the Hall of Fame, and eventually he will be. That's point number one. You listen to him because he has those kind of credentials. He also played in Dallas. The 3 years he played in Dallas, believe it or not, they were relatively respectable. They didn't win a playoff game. They were 0-2, but they went to the playoffs 2 of the 3 seasons that he was there, number one. And number two, they were 31-17 while he was there. So let's keep that. And this is at a time, Max, when Jerry Jones really was running the show before Stephen Jones really had his cachet elevated. Number three, let's take this into consideration as well. T.O. might have an inkling of what's going on with Dak Prescott. The fact that we see a guy who's a 4th round pick as a rookie playing lights out the way that he has played, with Jerry Jones flagrantly hesitant to just give the man the job since he's won 6 straight. And on top of it all, the entire offense is flowing with him, and continuity, cohesion, chemistry, all of those things do play pivotal roles. It's a no-brainer that Tony Romo shouldn't even be a part of this equation. But Jerry Jones is hesitant to do that because of Tony Romo. Who would be more qualified to speak about that than Terrell Owens? Remember, Max, when he got let go in 2009, yes, he cried about that's my quarterback, that's my teammate, et cetera, et cetera. But it was believed that there was some friction between him with Romo and Jason Witten, not only because they're best friends and they're roommates when they travel on the road together, but because T.O. felt like they would collaborate with one another to sort of keep him out of things and not get him the ball more. And him and Jason Witten, according to reports, even almost came to blows one time. Now, Jason Witten is class, and I'm not trying to point the finger at him because I like Jason Witten a lot, but I'm just talking about what was reported. Then we also have to take into account that T.O. didn't have the greatest relationship with then offensive coordinator Jason Garrett because of some of his play calling and how they felt he catered to the whole Romo-Witten connection. So when we think about Dak Prescott and what he is in the throes of potentially experiencing, the difference between him and T.O. is that he's a quarterback, not a wide receiver. He's not the prima donna that T.O. was perceived to be, of course, or actually was. And then you've got a situation where Dak Prescott looks at Tony Romo with all the affection, respect, and deference in the world. So that helps the situation. But it does not mean that the Romo-Jerry Jones dynamic isn't still in existence, and that may be why T.O. is most qualified than anybody to speak on an issue like this.
The question is, should people care what T.O. has to say about this subject? The answer is yes. As you mentioned, he's one of the greatest receivers of all time. He should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. And he played for the Cowboys, and he played with Tony Romo. That's my quarterback. And TMZ's even, if I recall the headline correctly, Dak's my quarterback, right? Now, if you listen to him talk, if you just read it in print, what he said, you might think, well, given his history, for the reasons you just outlined, Stephen A., maybe he has an axe to grind, and maybe that's why he's being negative toward Romo. But if you watch it and you see what he's saying, he's giving Romo his props. He's just saying, look, he's seeing what we all see. Look, they're 6-1. You want to mess around? And Dak is excellent. He just had this amazing comeback against the Eagles after he went to Lambeau and beat the Packers at Lambeau. It's not like, and Aaron Rodgers played. It's not like they had a backup quarterback playing, So he's right about all those things. And furthermore, the question as to whether we should care about T.O., the indication in the first place is that TMZ is asking him these questions. T.O.'s not like running around looking for a camera. Let me find a camera so I can tell everyone what I think about Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. You know what it's like, TMZ in L.A. You get off the plane at the airport, they get you. If they see you or me, let alone T.O., they're going to put a microphone there and ask you some questions. They do a great job. If you're walking down the block and they see T.O., they're going to ask him about this issue for those reasons. Who's better qualified to talk about it? And then we get this kind of harmless video, and we talk about it on TV because it's T.O. talking about, that's, the teary-eyed T.O. after a playoff loss. That's my quarterback. That's my teammate. That guy is saying, not even downing T.O., Romo, not even saying, well, he chased me out of town or anything like that. Just saying, yeah, that's my guy, but look what's going on. So I find no fault in T.O. or anyone who's interested in what he has to say in this matter. Yes, what he has to say is significant, and what he's saying is self-evidently true.
Well, again, what he's saying is significant because he has history that can directly identify with what Dak Prescott is potentially going through behind the scenes, but he's smart enough not to speak on, and the Dallas Cowboys are probably hoping we'll forget. T.O.'s very voice to this matter reminds us of what T.O. endured, because let's be clear, regardless of what you want to say about T.O., he got screwed over by the Dallas Cowboys. He should not have been let go by the Dallas Cowboys at that particular moment in time. They won when he was there in terms of regular season games. They lost when he wasn't. You remember those consecutive three back-to-back 8-8 seasons, along with a 6-10 season in between. That was in the aftermath of T.O.'s departure. So we have to remember that. We have to recall that and pay attention to it. In the end, again, he's reminding us potentially, whether directly or indirectly, whether intentionally or not, what Dak Prescott is potentially going through. No one is more qualified to do that when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys than Terrell
and I
Owens.
want to bring up one other thing. Just whenever T.O.'s name comes up, I feel that I need to say this. He was so unfairly criticized, sometimes fairly criticized. But I remember before the Super Bowl, and he played with Philadelphia with Donovan McNabb, our friend who's here on Mondays. And he was called selfish because he wanted to play on one leg. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when guys like Brett Favre would go out there and lauded almost universally by the media for being sacrificial at his age and everything. And in the Super Bowl, a one-legged receiver is called selfish. And the reason I bring that up is because he was the best player on the field that day, either team on one leg. I know it's not exactly germane to what we're talking about, but I feel like T.O.'s reputation has been so sullied at times unfairly that needs to be mentioned. I feel like that needs to be mentioned.
I can appreciate that mention. Here's where I will take it, and no one ever says this. Look, man, working conditions are not always ideal. Everybody doesn't do the right thing, and everybody doesn't act the way that they're supposed to act all the time. All of us are guilty of that in our careers. My point is, what the hell is your job? In other words, if T.O. ultimately is responsible for running routes, catching footballs, catching touchdowns, the fact that he didn't get along with players, well, damn, figure it out in the interest of winning. That's one of the issues that's why I'm so disgusted, for example, with the San Francisco 49ers, with the whole Trent Baalke, Jim Harbaugh deal. Look at what has happened to that franchise. You literally can say, because Trent Baalke and Ned York didn't get along well enough with Jim Harbaugh, they were willing to eviscerate the franchise just because they couldn't work with this guy.
I just want to make
ridiculous.
one more comment about that. That's the reason I bring up the Super Bowl, and you just highlighted it even more, is because there's a sense, don't worry about T.O. He wasn't a winning player. He was bad in the locker room, team chemistry. He's not the guy you want on your team. But you know how those things are decided? With the chips on the line. And when the chips were on the line, he played hurt and better than everyone else. He wasn't the problem.
Just want to congratulate the Indians on an unbelievable season. You guys did something that nobody would ever think you guys can do, and we're very proud of you. The whole Cavs organization, all the fans, the whole city of Cleveland, we're all proud of you guys. You guys got nothing to hang your heads low about. Use this as inspiration and get ready for next year.
LeBron showing love and support to the tribe on Uninterrupted. So someone who knows what it feels like to blow a 3-1 lead is Draymond Green, who trolled LeBron in Cleveland with this tweet. Man, 3-1 sucks. So we asked you earlier on Twitter, does the Cleveland loss put more pressure on LeBron to win another championship? The results are in. 73% say no added pressure to the King. Did our Twitter fans get it right?
No, they got it wrong. There's absolutely more pressure on LeBron James now, and let me explain why.
What?
Let me explain why. Remember, we had a question a week ago, is Cleveland now the epicenter of the sports universe? You said yes, Stephen A. I said no, because I didn't believe they were going to beat the Cubs, and because the Browns weren't very good, and because the Cavs have long odds now against this juggernaut Warriors team, longer odds maybe even than last year. So I didn't think it was for a night it was. They were getting their rings and Cleveland was in the World Series. But I didn't think it was the epicenter in any ongoing way where there was a moment in time. When you say is it the epicenter, what you're saying is there a renaissance in Cleveland? Now, sports are very important, not necessarily to the economy of a town, but to the spirit of a town. Remember in the early 80s when Detroit's economy was going through a bad time, it seems like that often happens, in Detroit, but a resilient town. But people were taking out mortgages on their houses and betting it on Tommy Hearns when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard because Hearns' success as a boxer made them feel in Detroit, at least the sports, and that bled into the rest of this kind of civic community, that there was a renaissance going on. Well, Cleveland just lost the World Series in heartbreaking fashion after being up 3-1 and then even tying the game, and it looked like they had the momentum and they were going to win, and they didn't. Johnny Manziel didn't exactly work out on the Browns. Now, did he? And the odds are longer than, I mean, if last year it took a miracle for LeBron, the miracle worker, to come back on the Warriors, this year I think the odds are longer with KD now in Golden State. So the pressure on LeBron is to make people believe, look, the mistake by the lake, that's Cleveland. That's what it's called. The Jake was called that, and the city's called that. The lake set on fire once upon a time. Think about that for a second. The beleaguered town of Cleveland. The lake set. Water is supposed to put fire out. Like if there was a fire, you'd be like, is there a lake somewhere where we could put the fire out? No, the lake itself is on fire. That town is feeling good about itself. We are in the middle of, or maybe the beginning of, a renaissance in this town, and suddenly it can just disappear. It can evaporate if the Cavs lose, because the Indians just lost. The Browns ain't going nowhere anytime soon. It's all on LeBron, and the Warriors just reloaded. There's more pressure than ever as a result of the Cleveland Indians losing the World Series.
First of all, speaking on behalf of the American people, pre-election mode, that
here we
is.
go.
I didn't understand half of what the hell you said. That's number one. Number two.
then I won't vote for you. You got to understand the issues.
Hold on, I'll let you speak. Here's the deal. Only you would try to frame it and define it for, like, just ignoring what it means to everybody else. When we debated the epicenter of the sports world, we were talking about that moment because of all that had happened and was happening in Cleveland. That's all we were talking about. Everybody and their mother knows that, for the most part, it's not going to stay that way beyond the moment. I mean, come on now. Number three. Now here we go with LeBron. You're talking about there's more pressure. Excuse me. Let me be very, very clear. LeBron did his job. The city of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, has a reigning, defending champion for the first time since 1964 in any sport because of LeBron James. Not Kyrie Irving, too. Let's throw him in there. But because of LeBron James. So let's understand something here. LeBron James is under no pressure whatsoever. Zero. He did his job. That's why he could be at the game cheering on the Cleveland Indians from a local perspective, even though he's a Yankees fan. Because you know what? He's sitting there and rooting for the city to continue to enjoy a moment he already provided. He did his job. LeBron, from now through at least June, most of June, LeBron is going to be the champion, the reigning, defending champion. He did his job.
Look,
he is under no pressure whatsoever. Zero.
Sports can make a town think times are getting better. And Lord knows Cleveland needs that and has needed it for some time. And if LeBron loses in the finals after what just happened to Cleveland, the sense will be what you mentioned before, that when it was the epicenter of the sports universe, it was just a fleeting moment in time. And in fact, maybe things are always going to be this way. I'm not saying it's real in terms of what he means to the economy of the town. I'm talking about the way sports can make someone feel. And let me just say that the Cleveland fans are some of the best in the world. The dog pound, the fans in Cleveland are the reason there's even
we want to praise the city of Cleveland after you're telling them they're going to be miserable. Okay, go ahead.
The dog pound is the reason. That was not an AstroTurf, speaking of politics, campaign, a fake corporate campaign to get them back. That was a real grassroots campaign led by fans in Cleveland when the Browns had already left to petition the NFL to get the franchise, not the franchise, but to get a franchise and be able to claim all of the history of the Browns back. This is an amazing sports town with loyal fans who finally, for the first time maybe ever, feel like things are getting better. Now that the baseball team just lost, there's more pressure on LeBron.
Allow me to retort. First of all, that's asinine. And here's why. Because based on what you're saying, anytime they lose, they could feel that way. The fact of the matter is I'm about to ruin your week. I'm going to get off of this show in about 35 minutes, and I'm going to encourage the radio folks that I know in Cleveland to give you a call.
Sure.
You will be getting interview requests all week long, because here's what's going to happen, Max. They're going to sit up there and remind you that not only are they the reigning defending champions, but it's the first time most of them had an opportunity to call themselves or consider themselves that.
They wanted to keep going, Stephen A.
Hold on.
They wanted to keep going.
Hold on. In their lifetime. So the point that I'm trying to make to you, before last year, some of them never, ever,
This is why you can't vote for my opponent.
Now they're champions.
This is why
and you're
you
saying
can't
if
vote
they don't
for my
repeat,
opponent.
that it's on LeBron. It's on LeBron because he has to repeat
This
because
is
the
why
Cleveland
you can't
Indians
vote for my
lost.
opponent.
Nonsense.
Do you hear what
That's
my opponent
nonsense.
is saying? This is why
That's
you
ridiculous.
can't vote for him. He's conflating the issue. I am not suggesting that Cleveland.
You're conflating every issue. That's the problem.
No, I am not suggesting that Cleveland is not grateful to LeBron. They are for good reason, and he deserves that gratitude. I'm saying there's more pressure than ever for him to keep the renaissance in Cleveland sports going because he's the one actually getting it done at the end of the day.
There is no renaissance if he's the only one getting it done.
Oh, sure there is. Because now you can have the Browns can be on their way up. The Cleveland Indians could just be a good team. You don't necessarily have to win the World Series if there are championships in that town.
It's really taking the fun out of the game for me, honestly. It really is. Because at times, I don't even feel safe, right? And enough is enough. Hits to the head, that's one thing. But when you're not protected in the pocket, that's another thing.
At least his outfit's fun. Ask and you shall receive. Cam said Sunday that he wanted to talk to the commissioner about the hits he's taking, and he got his wish. Cam called it a great discussion where they both were able to get their points across. Antonio Pierce back with us. How will this impact Cam moving forward, if any?
Well, I think initially, of course, you're going to see the emphasis by the referees to make the calls that they're supposed to make, the ones that we're seeing right there. That's blatant, especially anything to the legs and the knee area of a quarterback. And I have to agree with them. If that was a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, or one of the top quarterbacks in the league, they would get that call, no questions asked. I think it's because of the physicality that you see Cam play with, running the football on goal line, on third down, and staying in the pocket, being bigger than most linebackers and defensive ends in the league. I think they give him what I think I hear everybody talk about is that Shaq rule, right? And I don't think it's fair to him. It's going to limit his career in the long run if he keeps taking hits like this, especially to the head. It's already knocked him out of a game. You're talking about that hit right there to the knee. That could have knocked him out for the season. If I'm Ron Rivera, if I'm an offensive lineman, I'm going over and beyond now to make sure I protect my quarterback on the field and off the field. And there can be no questions asked about that, of why we're doing the things that we're doing as a Panthers organization, because without Cam Newton, you don't have a chance to win a lot of football games in the National Football League.
Yeah, I think it depends what was Cam's purpose in doing this. If his purpose was, I want the calls, which is admirable, then I think he did a smart thing, because I think he will get calls because there's a heightened awareness of it, and the refs know everyone's watching. But now he's a target. More of a target, I think, than ever.
Target to who, though?
I think the defenses now, and you will know much more about this than I will, obviously, there's a sense that Cam's being a little bit of a crybaby, that he's going to the commissioner. Right. So guys like, I don't know, Antonio Pierce might be like, oh, okay, I'm going to put a little extra on this one. And so now it's maybe even more dangerous for him, but the flip side is he's going to get the call. So what was most important to him, his actual safety or just getting that whistle blown? And if he's not so worried about his safety, which is a very tough guy thing to do, and he just wants those calls, power to him. But if actually the point of this was like, I want to keep myself safer, it may backfire.
Yeah. Here's my thing. First of all, there's certainly a lot of missed calls with Cam Newton. There's no doubt about that. I'm suspect in terms of what's going to happen with him from here on out. Because he's essentially called out officials. And we all know that even though they're examined and studied and judged every day with every little thing they do, AP, the reality is that they're human beings, and you never know how that could infiltrate the proceedings and ultimately affect their judgment, particularly when it's a call that can go either way. The benefit of the doubt is something that I fear is not going to be accorded to him because of how he elected to handle the situation as opposed to leaving it to Ron Rivera or somebody else to do so for him. My question to you, though, AP, is this. as a player, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, when you take into account how outspoken Cam was about this, how he came across saying the game wasn't fun for him anymore, how he didn't feel safe, etc., as right as you say he is sitting up here as an analyst, a commentator, a pundit, who I'm asking this question to is that former linebacker playing in the NFL. You hear that coming out of his mouth. What are you thinking? What are you planning if you're an opponent of Cam Newton?
We're going after him. No questions asked. We're going after him, and you're right. The analyst part of me, you're asking me a question, is Cam, what's going to change from it? And I do think there's going to be change. I'm a defensive player. I'm watching film. I'm listening to him. That's the mind game of football. This is where now we try to play those tricks with his mind and get after him. If it's even a nudge, right? If it's getting up and pushing off on him, whatever you could do, that extra little hit or laying on him, whatever you could do to get underneath his skin to make him start complaining, I'm getting him out of his game. He's worried about that instead of the play or what's going on. So you're 100% right. There's defense, especially. Look who he's going up against this week. LA Rams. Greg Williams, my guy, defensive coordinator. He's that kind of guy. That defense is that kind of defense who will try.
You show a weakness and they can exploit.
They're going to attack it.
Yeah,
and when you
don't give Donald any extra motivation.
There was a couple Steelers players that already said something about not having
a question, because as a defensive player, first of all, you already know he's going to get most of the calls and benefit out anyway. You don't want to hear him trying to get extra. And I do think he's right with the calls that's being missed. But as a defensive player, I don't care about that. No.
Well,
my job is to win the game.
Let me go back to that question to you as a defensive player. When you say you're getting into his head or whatever, how do you work around the extra attention that he may get with an official who may very well be sensitive to the complaints that he took to the league office? How do you work around that in terms of trying to get at him and get in his head? Could you illustrate and illuminate for us the kind of things a defensive player is going to do to sort of get him off his game? Exactly what is that?
Well, I would love to say what verbally I would say to him, but there's a lot of things that you would say during the game to players that you knew that had issues like that you can get in their head by saying certain things to them. Call them names, for example. And you say it's kiddie, but that's what you do. Yeah. That's the National Football League. That's when these guys are mic'd up. You hear all those hidden words and things being said. So I think that part mentally, verbally, and as much as you can, that fine line physically, you go after him. You go after him because, again, he's the head of the team. Take the head off, the body will fall, and so will that offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean by a little extra. So what he's done here, I don't know if he intended to do this, but it's really a tough guy move if you think about it. Right. Whether or not that's the intention. On the one hand, now here come the extra things that he's going to have to deal with, even more of them. On the other hand, he's going to get the whistle blown. So again, if his intention was, let me just help my team and get this whistle blown, then he did a good job. If his intention was actually to increase his own safety, I think it's going to backfire.
Yeah. You got to be smart either way how you do it. I think for Cam, the best thing he could do in that organization is to get rid of the football. Stop using him as your third down back, your goal line back, having him extra hits on your quarterback if he's already complaining about getting hit in the pocket.
How much of it is right now? Because when he's holding the ball in the pocket, he is getting hit. Guys, I watch these guys, they're not running very crisp routes.
No, they're not efficient often right now. And I think that's part of the problem that he's having a problem with. That offensive line is not helping him, nor does he have a running game.
Oh, he is the running game. The problem last year was, the amazing thing about Cam last year when he won the MVP and almost won the Super Bowl is his best wideout was his tight end, and he was the best running back. Yeah. I mean, you would think that they would do something to make that better in the offseason, but it got worse.
And they drafted all defensive players for the most part in the draft. Didn't really help out.
Do you believe, AP, that his meeting with Raj Goodell helped or hurt more?
I think I'm going to go back to what you said as far as awareness. I think the awareness is there. I think the attention for the next month or so is going to be there, just like in the preseason when they said they're going to overemphasize on this new rule. I think that's what you see. But at the end of the day, Cam allows this to happen by his style of play.
Right, and yet he doesn't want to give up that part of his game, which you don't blame him.
And that's him. That's his game. So you can't take it away.
What about last night? A night before the much-anticipated game against Kevin Durant, the Thunder outlasted the Clippers in a battle of undefeated teams. Russell Westbrook scored or assisted on 80% of the team's points when he was on the floor, including the last 11. Stephen A., what did you take away from this game?
You know what? What I took away from this game had very little to do with Russell Westbrook directly. Let me say this. If you are the Los Angeles Clippers and you have DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin on your front line, not that I saw Blake Griffin in that particular play, and Russell Westbrook drives down the lane and dunks uncontested with nobody in the vicinity, talks smack to you, your bench, and the crowd, right in front of your billionaire owner who laughs and is looking at the guy next to him like he's marveling at Russell Westbrook. That's not a good look for you if you're the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, let me be very, very clear. The Los Angeles Clippers, I would die to see them against the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals because I know that is a heated rivalry, and I believe in CP3 and how he'll respond to that challenge. Well, yeah, Blake Griffin was right there. He was right there, by the way, with that dunk. Here's my point. I am not sold on the Clippers, as I told you weeks ago, Max. This is the stuff that bothers me. Russell Westbrook comes into the house. He is in attack mode. The 10 turnovers were not impressive by any stretch, and we know that. But 35, 6, and 5, launching 30 shots. He's clearly in attack mode. You must respond. And if you're Chris Paul, yeah, you want to respond to some degree, but you gotta run the show. But you're Blake Griffin, 14 points, really? Really? You don't understand that the Clippers go where you take them? You don't understand that you got to respond to the challenge. You got to answer the bell. You got to help CP3 out. DeAndre Jordan blocks shots. DeAndre Jordan dunks on everybody. DeAndre Jordan rebounds. But there is one individual, Max, that is religiously not only counted upon, but responsible for stepping up and answering the bell with Chris Paul to help out on the offensive end. That's Blake Griffin. I can't have you scoring a pedestrian 14 points. I need better than that from Blake Griffin. He's a star. He's a legit 6'9", 6'10". He walks on air. He's a skywalker. This dude shows up. We know what he's capable of doing. But the Los Angeles Clippers still have not been in a Western Conference Finals. I need more from this brother, especially when people are alluding to you potentially leaving and ending up in Oklahoma City. They come into the house without Kevin Durant any longer, and they handle their business with Russell Westbrook leading the way, and you respond with 14 points. That's all you've got? Come on. I need more than that from Blake Griffin, and that's what I took away from this. The Los Angeles Clippers can't continue to come up short. I need more from them, and specifically Blake Griffin, who is a star. I need more from this brother. I just do.
You surprised me, Stephen A. Smith. Great newspaper man that you were. Great TV star that you are. You really usually nail that headline, you know? And this is more like someone who's looking for a story in there somewhere when the headline is right there for you. Here's the headline. Incredible Hulk shows up on basketball court and wins the game. This about Russell Westbrook, my man. Now,
Savage.
You can say, look, who's he really beating? The Sixers, the Suns, the Lakers. He's taking a lottery team tour and beating them, so he's compiling these amazing numbers and wins. And this is the first time he faced a really good team. And you can look at it like, well, how good are the Clippers if Westbrook is only beating the bad teams, can beat them? That's not the way I see it. It's how good is Westbrook if he can actually do that Incredible Hulk thing and go crazy and beat a good team like the Clippers. 85-83, we're down the stretch. You need him to be big. He was big. Last night, he didn't shoot very well. 0 for 7 from 3. 14 of 30 from the field, but 0 for 7 from 3. He had 10 turnovers. So he's doing his sometimes out-of-control Russell Westbrook thing, but in the context of his team trying to win games for the first time against a good team, they won because of Westbrook, and he is now averaging on the year 37.8 points. It's only 4 games. 37.8 points and 10-plus rebounds and assists. A triple-double with almost 40 points a game in the triple-double. And they're 4-0. They're one of only 2 undefeated teams with the Cavs. 4-0. So the headline from yesterday to me is not, oh, when are the Clippers going to get it together? It's, look at Russell Westbrook and the Thunder. They're 4-0, and they just got to win against the Clippers. That guy is amazing.
That's you. I expected to see that from the Oklahoma City Thunder early out on the block, number one, because of Russell Westbrook's mission, and number two, because of the soft schedule they would have in the first 3 games. The Clippers are clearly a different story, and I'm conceding that. Nobody's denying that. What I'm saying is I'm looking big picture, and I'm thinking big picture in terms of Blake Griffin and what you're going to need from him this year. Now, he's averaging 20 and 10 on the season thus far. We know he's no scrub. We know he's a star. But I promise you, Max Kellerman, sitting here this morning, I bet you Doc Rivers agrees with me. If you're going up against teams, any team really, but especially Russell Westbrook, I'm going to need more production from Blake Griffin. 14 points is a relatively pedestrian performance for him. It's not going to cut it against OKC. It's not going to cut it against San Antonio. It's not going to cut it against the Warriors. He's going to have to do more. That's all I'm saying.
One of the most interesting stories to me in this NBA season, because you say, like, who was the, in Space Jam, who was the protagonist of the movie and the league? Michael Jordan. Now they're making Space Jam 2 because the league, we're really all living in LeBron James's world. And this season's story is about LeBron James and the Cavs versus Kevin Durant and Steph and all them and the Warriors. And what's interesting to me is you have this X factor in Russell Westbrook, who simply doesn't have enough around him to compete with those teams you wouldn't think on paper. They did a good job of putting a little team together and getting rid of the bringing it younger and better, but there ain't enough there is there? Can Russell Westbrook somehow make this season about him? Is his willpower that strong?
Well,
is his desire and determination that strong that this is Russell Westbrook's story? I don't think the answer is yes, but the fact that we even have to entertain that.
What I'm saying is, be clear. Oladipo can play, and you've got size and Cantor and Enes Kanter and Steven Adams and those boys. If the NBA veers away from its MO over the last few years, and dare we say, allow teams to get away with a little physicality, Oklahoma City can make that interesting then.
The Cubs won the World Series for the first time since 1908, and it's estimated that Game 7 was watched by 35 million fans, which makes it the most watched game in the last 15 years. Stephen A., do you think this is going to increase MLB's popularity?
No, I do not. I think it was an aberration because of the Cub fan base experiencing a curse that spanned 108 years, 107 plus years. I think that had a lot to do with it. I think that now that the Cubs have won, I think that you'll see people appreciating good competition. But I certainly don't think that with football, with basketball being the way that it is, I don't think it's going to affect the popularity of the sport in terms of elevating it. I don't see that.
I agree. I don't think it's bad for baseball, but I don't think it's going to affect the long-term popularity. But I do think baseball's getting more popular, and I think the reason is the home run. Whenever the home run's been big and offense has been up, baseball's gotten more popular. In the 20s with Babe Ruth, throughout the 30s, there was a lot of home runs hit. Expansion in the early 60s, home runs hit. Whenever it's been a pitching era, attendance and interest has gone down. Why is the home run back? Well, obviously in the PED era, everyone was hitting home runs. Some guys with like 50 plus. But quiet is kept. The home run is back. It's just distributed more evenly throughout the league. And that's because with increased testing, there aren't a handful of guys juicing like crazy. But with greater knowledge that it's okay to hit home runs and strike out a lot, they're hitting more home runs and striking out more than ever before. And that goes for like middle infielders hitting 20-plus home runs. They've never had so many guys hit 20 home runs in a season. Even without the 50 home run hitters, they also have never had so many guys strike out 100 times. So more offense, more home runs, better for baseball. Popularity will increase.
I don't know if I feel like that. I mean, if the home runs are there, you're right. But I think that if you have a situation where that's not the case for any reason, and they don't do something to speed up the game a little bit more,
it'll go away.
I don't think you'll see a drastic increase. I really don't.
Agreed. It's dependent on offense.
Tonight, famous Jameis and Matty Ice. Who you got, guys? Bucks, Falcons in Tampa. Stephen A.?
I got to go with Matty Ice. I don't like what I'm seeing from Tampa.
Yeah, Bucks lose a tough one, but they're going to hang in there, but they lose.
I'm actually looking forward to this game. I'm excited to see both these quarterbacks. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We're going to do it again tomorrow. Stephen A. will be on the West Coast because he's calling a fight this weekend. Max, sorry, you're here with